Hi guys, welcome to some more Real Talk Dog Talk. I'm Tori.
And I'm Barb.
For those of you who haven't joined us before, if you have any questions or comments, you can email us at realtalkdogtalk@yahoo.com.
And if you are a regular listener and or emailer, we love to hear from you. Keep those emails coming in. They give us some good ideas for each episode. We love to hear from you.
So this week we are going to be talking about commitment to owning a dog.
Yeah, this is a subject that's kind of sensitive to me for just many reasons. I've worked in vet clinics, I've worked in, rescues, and it just seems like people are not really all that committed to keeping, once they get that dog, everyone loves a puppy, they aren't committed to keeping that puppy or dog, depending on what the situation is.
Well, and there's a lot of things you need to keep in mind when you do decide that you want to get a puppy. Go through a list of, where you're at. Do you have a family? Things like that.
Well, and I think you have to take into consideration that life will throw you curveballs left and right. And are you the kind of person that is going to roll with it and still make that work? Or are you going to say, I got to move, so I'm going to rehome this dog. It's just not convenient. I've moved, hundreds of miles with a car load of kids and dogs. And it was never a thought in my mind that I better get rid of them or rehome them because it was inconvenient to move from one state to another with them. And I didn't get rid of the kids either. I mean, you have to be committed knowing that life does throw you a few curveballs, and what are you going to do about it?
They're part of the family too, and you can't just decide that, no, I'm not going to anymore.
Well, and if you are the kind of person that does do that, hey, I'm not looking to make points today, shame on you.
Right. Just don't bother even getting one.
I know there are people who, have hectic work schedules, or maybe they're single parent, or possibly, and they might be absolute dog lovers, cat lovers, fish lovers, whatever it might be. And somehow they know in their minds that, they don't have a good lifestyle for getting a pet.
Well, and I actually have a friend who works for UPS, and he's an animal lover. He likes dogs. He'd like to have one, but he was talking to me the other day and said, I just don't have time to train the puppy properly. I won't have time to make sure that the dog has everything they need. So, it was very responsible of him to decide not to get a dog when, he did recognize that he's not going to be as available as he should be for owning a dog.
Well, and if you take a puppy, I'm going to say puppy because they're the ones that you have to, really get down to the basics on training. If you take one on at a point where you're not going to be able to handle the training and giving him the proper attention, you're going to end up with a dog that could potentially have behaviors. And then you do have a problem. Then you have a dog that doesn't go potty where it should go potty, barks ridiculously loud and often, causing irritation to you, neighbors, your kids, if you have kids. So, it's just creating a bigger problem. So I must say, for the folks out there that are animal lovers and have opted to not get pets, I think that is just amazing and really great that you have that foresight.
Right. Well, and with all of that too, it's going to take longer and more training once those bad habits do develop from that.
Or you'll get irritated and send them to some sort of rescue or humane society, which I do know, I had a few people talk to me recently, they're having troubles potty training a dog, and, you start asking about their schedule and you realize that there's no one home to put that dog out to go potty. I mean, if I was locked in a room or a kennel and no one would let me out to pee, I'd pee on their floor too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so, they're going to rehome them because they're peeing all over the house. But really, you have to take a few steps back as to why is this happening? Are they getting outside often enough? I realize in our climate up here in northern Minnesota, you can't just leave dogs outside unless you have, a special environment set up for them so they're warm and have somewhere, safe to be, just because of our temperatures and the amount of snow we get.
So that's going to take, with that, more trips outside more frequently, especially in the colder months and all of that. So you need to be prepared to be able to do that. I know of a couple that had bought a puppy and they took, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks off just for that puppy because they knew they were getting the puppy. They wanted to have plenty of time to, train it and do all the things necessary when you initially get them.
Well, I think that says a little bit about the people that are buying them, that they're willing to commit the time and the effort into it. But, you also have to think, the average dog lives, 12 years, 13 years. Some of those smaller dogs live longer. So you have to be ready for that long-term commitment with the dog. And if you're not, there's absolutely nothing wrong with saying you can't commit to that. Just don't get the pets.
Right, exactly. Nobody's going to hold it against you for not getting one if you can't take the time and effort to put forth for that, whatever kind of pet you decide to get.
I think when you're considering getting a pet, we're focused on dogs because that's what we love. I think you have to think in terms of your living situation, your yard situation. Is there an area for them to exercise? I think you have to look in terms of your income and also your family. If you're an individual that lives alone, you really don't have to worry about talking to other people about what your decision is going to be. But definitely, you might want to even think in terms of, if you would ever end up married or with somebody, and have kids, is this 13-year commitment going to be a problem for you if your life changes? And, well, for me, it's easy because, if I'm with someone that doesn't like dogs, they're history because the dogs aren't going anywhere as far as I'm concerned. So that's just me.
There was, I actually saw a post on Facebook. It was kind of funny. It was a Christmas picture of a couple with a golden retriever puppy. And then it was a couple years later and it said like then and now. And it was the girl and the dog. So she made that choice. I got a kick out of that one when I saw it.
Well, I think those are things that you have to take into consideration. And if you have an existing family, I think there has to be a conversation about delegating responsibility. If you have older kids, are they going to be willing and able to help? Are they going to be too busy with sports? They can't do it. They won't do it. They don't like the responsible end of it. And then there again, you could be looking at behavior problems coming from that. So I think it's important to always include your family, your partner, and even kind of project your own thoughts into like where you're going with your life. Is that dog going to be part of that journey?
Right. And even, like you had said, if you do move, are you willing to take the effort of looking into different places that accept animals if you're renting or, guidelines in whatever neighborhood you have as far as dogs go? Things like that. There's a lot of things you need to look into, and it's important to keep that in mind when, when you are deciding whether or not to commit to owning a dog.
When you are making your list for, ownership, I think one thing that is wise to consider, and I only know this because of Primo Corso Kennels, but you do want to look at if this is a breed that there is possible breed restrictions in different areas. If you're not really sure where your life is going, that's something to consider. I honestly don't know off the top of my head where exactly. There are certain states, counties, cities that have restrictions on pit bulls. I know the Cane Corso is one, unfortunately. But, you might want to take a look at the breeds that you love and see if that is something that has limitations as to where you can go and, live comfortably without having legal issues over it.
Well, and I know some towns, which this may not apply to everybody, but if you have multiple dogs, there's a limit on, how many and also breeds. But that's something to think about as well, if you do have more than one.
I guess in a nutshell, the reason I think about this as a really good topic to discuss is just the fact that, and it's on a regular basis, you hear people say, they're going to rehome a dog because it's peeing where it shouldn't pee. You're going to rehome it because it's barking. You're going to rehome it because you've moved. You're going to rehome it because you just don't have any place for them to get, exercise. They're pent up in the house too much. These are all reasons that I hear people telling me that they are thinking about rehoming a dog. And what really gets my goat is a lot of this is just sheer laziness. I don't ever hear these people that come to me and have, complaints about, things that are happening with their dogs. Never once have I heard them say, hey, do you know somebody who could help me work on that with this dog? Do you know a trainer? Do you know this? Do you have any ideas? I don't hear that. But it's almost like they are looking for me to say, yeah, that's a bad dog. You probably should rehome it. It might be a bad dog because you made a bad choice or you're too stinking lazy to get up and fix it like you should.
Well, and I've even heard of people rehoming dogs because of, relationship breakups and things like that. I mean, that's no excuse whatsoever. And I think that's awful, especially if, not only for the dog, but the family, kids that may be involved. I mean, all of that. And that's...
Well, if there's children involved, not only are they looking at a breakup between, a parent and their partner, whether it's both parents, whatever the case may be, but then they're also taking that dog out of the picture, which might be an actual companion to the children. And so then what? One of the partners is gone and the dog's gone. Life has fallen apart in front of these kids. And again, in all reality, I think you have to kind of look at where your level of commitment is. Are you more committed to, making that purchase of a dog or a puppy and having it there throughout its life? Or are you more worried about, socializing, getting out to the bar, doing this, doing that? Anybody who is around me, my family, I'm not going to make any kind of concessions so that they're more comfortable.
Right.
That is just not a happening thing. So, it's this is a little bit of a heated topic for me because I know a lot of people do, tell me about their problems with, lack of time, the dog's naughty, and they never are looking for solutions for the problem. They just want the dog gone, and then they don't have to deal with it. And I think that's really, do we do that with our kids? Really? Let's see, we got potty training problems with our 3-year-old. You going to get rid of that kid? No.
Probably not. You would hope not. Well, and that's, with the holidays coming up here, I know a lot of people think, oh, it's going to be such a good idea to get this person a puppy or get one for the kids without really thinking about any of it at all. And especially if you're getting a dog for somebody else, I mean, that really should be a conversation instead of just surprising somebody with it, because you may not always know all the different aspects of what they've got going on in their life or plans they may have for the future also.
Well, I do know Primo Corso Kennels is, I think pretty much, I won't say all breeders, but good breeders will have an application process. And I think it helps weed out the impulse shoppers.
Yeah.
It helps them kind of hone in on if these people are stable. If they've have 45 dogs in the last 5 years, red flag. But the application process for breeders helps them better place the dogs in homes that they won't end up in shelters or back at the breeders. It's a process that I know seems kind of like it's intruding on people's lives, but it's meant to do two things. One, place the dog in the correct home, one that is appropriate to the puppy's energy level or behavior. And then also it does make the people who are purchasing the dog kind of think things through and ask themselves some questions. So a responsible breeder will have an application process.
Well, and I have heard of a few people that just don't like the application process. They think they shouldn't have to give that kind of information. But, I think if you're not willing to give that little bit of information, that's a big red flag in itself. Just not wanting to, it's not like it's that intrusive of information, but if you're committing to owning this dog, then you shouldn't have any problem answering these questions either.
Well, they're not asking for social security numbers or blood type.
Right.
They're asking questions that pertain to the dog's well-being, where they're going to be, things along those lines. I will say, in my time of dealing with dogs, there was one incident where at the Humane Society where a elderly lady had passed away, and the family brought her Boston Terrier to the Humane Society. And, I guess you don't really think about that kind of thing when you're young, but, here was this family that had to figure out what to do with this little dog. And the dog was an older dog. I think she was like 13. That might have been a guess on their part, but, it wasn't a cute puppy that everybody wants. It was an older dog. And, the family was not at a point where they could take on a dog. And so they brought it to the Humane Society. And I guess in that particular situation, you can kind of see where there would be, an issue with having the dog. It's not a decision that the surviving family made to get a dog. But, for us older folks, I guess it's a good idea to have something, in place for if you do pass away, that your dog is provided for, or maybe you have someone who would be willing to take your dog. I don't know. I suppose some people might, have it buried with them, put them to sleep and have it. That'd be gross, huh?
That'd be something else. A
little disturbing.
I mean,
talk about a forever home.
Well, yeah, no kidding. That is forever.
So that was an interesting situation, and she was an adorable little dog, but she was hard to place because she barked over and over. She was just a horrible barker, and I think that was kind of a result of her owner dying, and then going to this house and that house, and then being in the shelter, and then going to some strange house, and she just was really tricky to place. So I know that can be an issue that is kind of unavoidable. And I won't say there is never a reason to place a dog in a shelter, but I think they would have to be pretty extreme.
Well, and that's a kind of a tough thing for sure for the family to plan for, considering, I mean, you can't really come up with a pre-plan for that unless the owner themselves does. I know when I was young, I had a Chihuahua that was a little older, and I believe his owner had died as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't exactly the most pleasant little dog in the world, but I mean, when, they're older like that, it's got to be even tougher to adjust to those changes. And, that dog went from, an older man to a house with 4 kids and other dogs. So I'm sure that was a huge adjustment, but it does happen for sure. It's not something I think anyone really expects either. So.
Well, I think I actually was talking to a fella down by the Minneapolis area who wanted to get into the breeding business, and he was unable to sell his dogs. And the breed, the quality, all that I won't comment on, but he had contacted me to see if I had any idea of people who'd be interested in his dogs. And he said to me that he would really hate to have to take them down to the Humane Society. He'd rather see them in homes. And that is really horrible planning.
That was a whole litter, right?
It was, I think he had sold like 3 of them.
Oh, okay.
And had like 5 left.
Oh, yeah, that's a lot.
And he lived, within the city limits, so he didn't have a huge yard. And, older guy just trying to supplement his income. I totally understood it. He seemed like a well-meaning guy. But that's the kind of planning that is, really unacceptable, and it is filling up shelters. So I think when breeders have that kind of attitude, not really ideal and kind of a bad idea.
Well, and if you're planning on going into breeding, I mean, that is definitely something you should look at beforehand. That is a lot of puppies to be rehoming if you can't just sell them.
Well, there's, there are breeders that won't breed unless they have a list on actual deposits for puppies. They just won't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that you have to be a pretty well-established breeder to pull that one off. But, it is hard. And like Primo Corso Kennels does not just have puppies on hand all the time. It's controlled breeding. And, we don't breed many females at one time. It's the kind of thing that's a lot more controlled than that. So, it's, you have to look at the breeders, but, getting back to the level of commitment, I think that, there are reasons that we have shelters, necessary things. And then there are people who lack commitment and just think it's okay to just dump off an animal and move on with their life. And that is absolutely an awful, I can't say don't think that way, but it's an awful way to think in terms of animals being disposable, because they do have emotions, they do have feelings, they do have bonds and loyalty towards their owners. And it's just awful that they have to live a life of being bounced from home to home to home.
Because they're not just animals, and that does affect them terribly. And that's, setting them up for having a tough time with whatever home they may go to after that.
So it'll create behaviors.
Right, yes. Yeah. Yep.
So I guess this is going to be a little bit shorter episode of our podcast, because there's no real research done. It's just my opinions. I'm sure Tori has similar feelings on it.
Yes.
I understand there's extreme situations where, rehoming needs to happen. but it is the kind of thing that I think you need to be fully committed to the decision you're making. And you have to be prepared if there is a problem to consult a professional, whether it be a trainer, a behavioralist, or even talk to your vet about it. I mean, they're educated. They have some pretty good ideas as to, what to do about it. And if they don't know what to do about it, they might know someone they can refer you to.
Somewhere to start anyway.
Yeah. So, do your research. If you run into a glitch, and, always find the professionals in your area. And honestly, maybe the rehoming or taking them to a shelter will never have to happen.
We hope not. So again, if you guys have any questions or comments, go ahead and email us at realtalkdogtalk@yahoo.com or comment down below and go ahead and hit that follow button. With our next episode next week, we'll be talking about reading the labels.
Well, thank you for joining us, and we hope that you'll be here for our next episode.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.